The bread was moving. Ren noticed it from the corner of his eye. He had been wiping down the counter, half asleep, ready to close the shop for the night. The last loaf of the day was sitting on the cooling rack near the back wall, and it was sliding slowly toward the floor. He put down his cloth. He watched. The loaf tipped off the rack and disappeared behind the large flour sack. He kept propped against the wall. There was a soft thud, then silence, then the sound of very small, very determined chewing. Ren walked around the counter. He moved quietly, not because he was trying to sneak up on anything, but because he was always quiet. It was a habit from years of working alone. He stopped at the edge of the flour sack and looked behind it. A dragon hatchling looked back at him. She was tiny, barely the size of a house cat, maybe smaller. Her scales were dark, a deep dusty gray that made her look like a piece of burnt wood. Her wings were folded against her back, one of them sitting slightly wrong, the left side drooping lower than it should. Her claws were wrapped around the loaf of bread with surprising firmness for something so small, and her eyes, gold, wide and very bright, were fixed on his face. She did not run. She did not hiss or puff up or do any of the things a wild hatchling was supposed to do when cornered. She just sat there, holding the bread, staring at him, waiting to see what he would do. Ren looked at her for a long moment. He looked at the bread, he looked at her ribs, which were visible even through her scales. He looked at the crumpled wing. He looked at the way she was sitting, pressed as far back into the corner as she could get, which was not very far, and the way her eyes were steady, even though the rest of her was very, very still, in the way that small things go still when they are frightened and have nowhere left to go. He went back to the counter. He took the bread knife, cut the remaining half loaf that was still on the rack, and wrapped one half in paper. He put it behind the flour sack. He filled a small bowl with water from the tap and set that down too. Then he picked up his cloth, finished wiping the counter, turned off the front lights, and went into the back room to sleep. He told himself it was just this once. He had told himself that before about other things. The old dog that used to sit outside the shop in the rain. The avian kid from down the road who was always at the bread in the window with that particular expression. He had a habit of feeding things. Ren used to say he had no instinct for self-preservation. He used to say that wasn't true. She used to laugh. In the morning, the bread and the water were both gone. The hatchling was gone too. The flour sack had been pushed slightly to one side, just enough to make a gap between it and the wall. Ren looked at the gap for a moment, then pushed the sack back into place and started his morning batch. That day Nilo came in around noon to buy a small roll, the way he always did. Nilo was the alien boy who worked at the goods shop next door, young, green-skinned, with 2 large ears that he hadn't grown into yet. He leaned on the counter while Ren packaged the roll and looked around the bakery the way young people look at spaces when they're trying to seem casual. Heard something in your shop last night, Nilo said. Old building, Ren said. Sounded like scratching. Old building, Ren said again. Nilo took his roll and left. He looked back once through the window, but Ren was already turned away mixing flour. That night Ren left a bowl of water behind the flour sack before he went to bed. He also left a piece of soft bread and a small strip of dried meat he had been saving for his own dinner. He lay in the back room and stared at the ceiling. He didn't know what species she was. Exactly, dragon hatchlings weren't uncommon in the colony. There were a few clutch families in the upper district, well documented, registered with the city, but a hatchling alone in the lower district, this small, this thin, that was different. That meant something had gone wrong somewhere. He didn't know what. He didn't know enough about dragons to guess. What he knew was that she had been hungry enough to steal bread. What he knew was that she had not run, even when she had every reason to. What he knew was that something that small shouldn't have to be alone. He closed his eyes. In the morning, the food was gone again. The bowl had been moved 3 into the left, which meant she had drunk from it. And on the floor beside the bowl, sitting very deliberately in the center of the space, was a small, smooth, dark pebble. Ren picked it up, turned it over in his fingers. He didn't know what it meant. He put it in his pocket and started the morning batch. She came back the next night. Ren knew she would. He had known it. When he put the pebble in his pocket, instead of setting it back down, he had known it when he swept the floor that evening and swept around the flour sack. Instead of moving it, small decisions. He didn't think too hard about them. She was already behind the sack when he went to lock the front door. He could hear her, a faint rustling, the tiny scrape of claws on the stone floor. He left the food in the usual spot and went to bed without looking. By the 4th night, she was sleeping on top of the flour sack. Not behind it anymore, on top of it. Curled into a tight ball, her tail wrapped around herself, her crumpled wing tucked flat against her side. She opened one gold eye when Ren walked past, watched him move to the back room, and closed it again. He stood in the doorway for a moment. Then he went to bed. He started leaving more food, not a lot. He didn't have a lot, but enough, soft bread, scraps of cooked meat when he had them, a bit of hard cheese that he had been meaning to finish. He told himself he was using up things that would go bad. Anyway, this was mostly true. He noticed other things now that she wasn't hiding. She didn't like sudden sounds. A door slamming down the road made her flat against the sack, wings tight, eyes wide until the silence came back. She relaxed slowly, piece by piece, like something unwinding. He started being careful about the way he set down pots and pans. He didn't think about why. It just seemed right. Her crumpled wing bothered him more as the days passed. It wasn't broken. It moved when she stretched, and she didn't seem to be in pain, but it sat wrong, like something that had healed without being set properly. She couldn't fully extend it. When she tried, it would open halfway and then stop, the left edge curling inward instead of spreading flat. He didn't touch it. He wasn't sure if she would let him, and he didn't want to test it. Nilo saw her on the 5th day. He came in for his noon roll and stopped dead in the doorway, staring at the flour sack where Soot, Ren, had started calling her Soot in his head, though he hadn't said it out loud, was sitting a patch of dusty sunlight watching Nilo with calm gold eyes. "That's a dragon," Nilo said. "Observant," Ren said. "A baby dragon in your bakery." "She's a stray," Ren said. He handed Nilo his roll. "Don't make a thing of it." Nilo took the roll slowly, still staring. Soot stared back. Neither of them blinked for a long moment. Then Soot looked away, apparently bored, and went back to watching the sunlight move across the floor. "Does she have a name?" Nilo asked. "No," Ren said. He said it very quickly. Nilo looked at him. Ren looked at the counter. Right, Nilo said. He left that afternoon when the shop was quiet. Ren sat on the stool behind the counter and watched Soot sleep. She slept a lot during the day, which made sense. Hatchlings needed sleep to grow. Even he knew that much. She slept with her chin resting on the edge of the flour sack, her small chest rising and falling, her crumpled wings spread just slightly, as if she was trying, even in sleep, to get it to lie flat. He thought about what Nilo had said. Does she have a name? He thought about the pebble which was still in his pocket. He had moved it to a small dish on the shelf near the back room door because it felt wrong to keep carrying it around and also wrong to throw it away. He didn't know why she had left it. Animals left things sometimes, he knew that, but the pebble had been placed, not dropped, not left by accident. It had been sitting in the exact center of the space in front of the water bowl, like something put there on purpose. He thought about that more than he meant to. The next morning there was a second object beside the water bowl, a small, slightly bent button, metal, dark, with 4 holes and a raised pattern on the face. He had never seen it before. He had no idea where she had found it. He put it in the dish with the pebble. 2 things now. He stood at the back room door and looked at them sitting together in the dish, the pebble smooth and dark, the button catching the light at its edges. Soot was watching him from the flour sack. When he looked at her, she held his gaze for a moment, then she curled up, tucked her head under her wing, the good one, and went back to sleep. Ren went to start the morning batch. He thought about the button all day, where she could have found it, whether she had gone out at night through the gap under the back door, whether she had been out in the lower district in the dark, small and alone, and come back before dawn. The thought sat in his chest in a way he didn't examine too closely. That night before he went to bed, he blocked the gap under the back door with a folded cloth, not locked, just covered. He didn't know exactly why. He told himself the draft had been bothering him. The fever hit on a Tuesday. Ren woke up with his blanket soaked through and the room tilting. When he tried to sit up, he made it as far as the doorway between the back room and the bakery before he had to stop and lean against the frame. The floor looked very far away. His legs felt like wet clay. He managed to get the front door sign flipped to closed. That was about all he managed. By midday, he was back on his sleeping mat, too hot and then too cold and then too hot again, with a splitting headache and a body that had decided it was done cooperating. He drank some water. He couldn't eat. He lay on his side and stared at the wall and tried to remember if he had any fever medicine in the back cabinet. He was fairly sure he did not. He heard Soot moving around in the bakery, the soft click of her claws on the stone, a pause, the click again. Closer this time. He didn't turn over. He heard her stop just inside the back room doorway. He could feel her looking at him the way she always looked at things, steady, quiet, taking in everything before deciding what to do about it. Then she went away. He fell asleep for a while. When he woke up, it was darker. His throat was very dry. The water jug that had been sitting across the room near the far wall was now directly beside his mat. He hadn't moved it. He was certain he hadn't moved it. He drank from it without sitting up, which wasn't graceful, and lay back down. There was something on the mat near his shoulder, he turned his head slowly and looked. A piece of cloth not his, it was rough. Dark blue, roughly torn at one edge, the kind of material used in market stall. Curtains, he had no idea where she had gotten it. He pulled it up toward him. It smelled like dust in the outside air. He used it anyway, folded it and pressed it against his forehead. At some point in the night, he woke to a warm weight settling against the back of his knees. He didn't move. He could hear her breathing, small and steady. He could feel the heat of her through the blanket, which was actually useful because he had gone cold again. He lay still and let it happen. He woke in the morning feeling worse, but not as frightened. His head still hurt, his legs still didn't work properly, but the jug was still beside him, and when he reached for it, it wasn't empty. She had knocked it and a little had spilled, but most of it was still there. She was sitting at the foot of the mat, watching him. In front of her, arranged in a small, careful line, were three things: the dark pebble and the metal button he had put in the dish on the shelf, and something new, a dried flower, yellow and small, the kind that grew in the cracks between the market stones in the lower district, flat and brittle now, but clearly once bright. She had brought the dish off the shelf. He looked at the three things. He looked at her. She looked back. Her gold eyes were very serious. "You didn't have to do that," he said. His voice came out rougher than he expected. She blinked once. Then she stepped forward delicately over the line of objects and sat down beside his shoulder, close but not touching, just close. He lay there for a long time. On the second day, Nilo knocked on the back door. Ren managed to call out that he was sick, and Nilo went away and then came back an hour later and left a small paper package outside the door. Fever powder from the goods shop, already measured out, no note. Ren found it when he finally made it to his feet. He mixed the powder with water and drank it, leaning against the counter. Soot was on the flour sack, watching him. "Nilo's a good kid," Ren said to her. She made a sound low in her throat, not a hiss, something quieter, more like agreement. He stood at the counter and looked at the three objects she had moved from the shelf and arranged at the foot of his mat. He had put them back in the dish, but he had moved the dish to the counter where he could see it from the work area. The pebble, the button, the flower. He didn't know what they meant. He knew they meant something. The way she had arranged them, the way she had been sitting behind them, watching him, that wasn't random. That wasn't just an animal moving things around. He would have asked someone if he'd known who to ask. By the third day, the fever was mostly gone. He was tired and slow, but he could stand properly, and his hands were steady enough to mix dough. He opened the shop at noon instead of morning. He swept the floor. He lit the oven. Soot moved from the flour sack to the counter, which she had never done before, and sat 2 feet from the dish, watching him work. He reached over at one point and refilled her water bowl without breaking his rhythm. She watched him do it. She looked at the bowl. She looked at him. Then she stepped forward and drank from it, which she normally only did at night when he wasn't watching. Ren kept working. He thought maybe that meant something, too. The district official had the kind of face that had practiced being pleasant for so long that it had stopped meaning anything. He came on a Wednesday just after the morning rush. His name was Adler, a tall man in a clean gray coat with a clipboard and a colleague standing half a step behind him who wrote things down. Whenever Adler spoke, he stepped into the bakery, looked at Soot sitting on the counter, and his pleasant expression held without flickering. "Mr. Calloway," he said, "I'll keep this brief." He kept it brief. He explained in the tone of someone reading from a document he had read many times that the colony district charter prohibited the unsanctioned housing of unbonded juvenile dragons within a registered commercial or residential premises. He explained that unbonded hatchlings were classified as unstable under Article 9 of the Interspecies Cohabitation Code. He explained that there was a relocation office in the upper district, well staffed with proper facilities. He explained that Wren had 3 days to surrender the hatchling and that failure to do so would result in a daily fine beginning on the 4th day, a number he named that was approximately twice what Wren made in a slow week. He said all of this looking at Wren. He did not look at Soot again. Wren said nothing through most of this. When Adler finished, Wren looked at the clipboard, then he looked at the colleague with the pen, then he looked at Adler. "She's not unstable," Wren said. "The classification isn't based on individual assessment," Adler said. "It applies to all unbonded juveniles. She moved a water jug when I was sick." Wren said, "She brought me a cloth." "Mr. Calloway." "She's not unstable," Wren said again. He wasn't raising his voice. He was just saying it clearly, the way he said things when he was sure of them. Adler looked at him for a moment, then he clipped his pen closed, tucked the clipboard under his arm, and said that he hoped Wren would make the right decision. He left. The colleague followed, writing something on the way out. The door closed. The bakery was quiet. Soot had not moved during any of this. She had sat on the counter and watched Adler with the same flat, steady attention she gave everything. Now she looked at Wren. He looked back at her. 3 days, he said, not to her specifically, just out loud because it helped to say it. She blinked. Word got around the lower district by the next afternoon. It always did. The lower district was small enough and bored enough that news moved fast, and a bakery owner with an illegal baby dragon was considerably more interesting than most news. 2 of his regular customers asked him about it sideways, buying bread and then mentioning casually that they had heard something. He confirmed he had a hatchling. He said he was handling it. A woman named Bertha, who ran the laundry 3 doors down, came specifically to tell him she thought it was very sweet, and also that the relocation office had a bad reputation and he should look into it before trusting them. She said this very quietly, like someone sharing a secret. He thanked her. Nilo came in at noon. He didn't ask about the official. He bought his roll, looked at Soot on the counter, and then looked at Wren. "What are you going to do?" Nilo asked. "I'm thinking," Wren said. Nilo nodded slowly. He looked at Soot. Again, she was watching the street. Through the window, her tail curled around her feet, her crumpled wing held carefully against her side. "She's bigger than when I first saw her," Nilo said. Wren looked. She was a little, not much. A few centimeters maybe. Her ribs weren't as visible. The dull, dusty look of her scales was gone. They caught the light now just slightly, like dark stone after rain. "Yeah," Wren said. Nilo left. That night Wren sat on the floor of the bakery instead of going to the back room, he sat with his back against the counter, legs stretched out, and he looked at the shop. The worn counter, the old oven, the flour sacks, the cracked lower corner of the front window that he kept meaning to repair. Soot climbed down from the counter after a while. She moved carefully, claws finding the edge, then the stool, then the floor. She crossed the bakery and stopped in front of him. She looked at him, then she stepped forward and climbed into his lap, all 4 kilos of her claws retracting, tail curling around herself, and settled. Ren put one hand on her back, very lightly. She was warm, her scales were smoother than he'd expected. He could feel her breathing, steady and slow. He sat there for a long time. He thought about the relocation office. He thought about the fine. He thought about Adler's clipboard. He thought about Article 9 of the Interspecies Cohabitation Code, which he had never read and now wished he had. He thought about Soot moving the water jug when he was too sick to get up. He thought about the dried flour on his sleeping mat. He thought about the 3 objects in the dish on the counter, which she had carried from the shelf to the foot of his bed in the middle of the night while he was sick and couldn't look after himself. He thought about what kind of creature does that, what kind of creature, hungry and alone and outcast, still brings things. He scratched gently behind the ridge of her neck where the scales were thinnest. She made the quiet sound again, the one that wasn't a hiss. He did not take her to the relocation office. On the 3rd day, it was not Adler who came. Ren heard her before he saw her. The whole street went quiet first, not gradually, the way a street quiets when it gets late, but all at once. Voices stopped, footsteps stopped. The cart that had been rattling over the uneven stones outside went still, the kind of quiet that happens when something very large and very old walks into a space that was not built to hold it. The door of the bakery opened. She had to angle herself to get through, not because she was too tall exactly, but because of the way she carried herself, which took up more space than her actual size. She was ancient. Ren could see it in the texture of her scales, which were the color of old iron and had the look of stone that had been weathered for a very long time. Her eyes were amber, pale and bright, and they moved across the bakery slowly and without hurry. She looked at the shop. She looked at the dish on the counter with the 3 objects in it. She looked at Soot, who was sitting very still on the flour sack watching. Then she looked at Ren. "You are the human," she said. Her voice was deep and very clear, each word deliberate. "I am," Ren said. "I am Dora." She did not say it like an introduction. She said it like a fact. "I have come for the hatchling." Ren looked at Soot. Soot looked at Ren. She had not moved from the flour sack, but she was pressed against the back wall behind it, her crumpled wing tight against her side, her whole body low and still. "On whose authority?" Ren asked. "The clutch law," Dara said. "She was ejected from her birth clutch. She is therefore unregistered and unbonded. She falls under the jurisdiction of the Elder Council to be placed in a sanctuary." "What happens at the sanctuary?" Ren asked. "She will be kept safe," Dara said. "She will have shelter, food, and medical attention. Her wing may be corrected." "Will she bond?" Ren asked. Dara paused just slightly, the way something pauses when a question is more precise than expected. "Most hatchlings in sanctuary do not." She said, "The conditions are not Another pause. They are safe. Being safe and being alone are not the same thing, Ren said. He said it the same way he had said. She's not unstable to Adler, not loudly. Not aggressively, just clearly, like something he knew to be true and was not going to apologize for knowing. Dara looked at him for a long moment. You are a baker, she said. I am. You have no background in dragon husbandry, no registration, no documentation of any kind. That's correct, Ren said. Then on what basis, Dara said, do you believe you are a better option than they? Sanctuary. She already chose, Ren said. Dara's pale amber eyes moved to him. Steady waiting. Ren reached under the counter and brought out the dish. He set it in front of Dara on the counter, the pebble, the bent metal button, the dried yellow flour. She brought these, he said, one at a time over about 2 weeks. She put them in a line at the foot of my mat when I was sick. She moved the water jug so I could reach it. She brought a cloth from somewhere outside. He looked at the dish, not at Dara. I didn't know what it meant. I'm still not entirely sure. But I know she placed them deliberately, like they were supposed to tell me something. The bakery was very quiet. Dara looked at the dish. She looked at it for a long time, then she looked at Soot, who still hadn't moved. Soot met her eyes, did not look away, did not lower her head, which Ren would later learn was significant. A gift bond, Dara said. She said it very quietly, almost to herself. She initiated a gift bond. What does that mean? Ren asked. Dara turned back to him. Her expression was unreadable, but something in it had shifted, something that hadn't been there before. Among our kind, she said slowly, gift bond is how a hatchling signals that they have chosen a guardian. It is an ancient behavior. It predates language. It is not taught. It cannot be taught. It is instinct. She stopped. We have not seen an unbonded hatchling initiate a gift bond outside of a clutch. And it has been a very long time. She chose, Ren said again. Yes, Dara said, she chose. She was quiet again. Ren didn't speak. He waited the way he always waited, without filling the silence, without pushing. The gift bond is recognized under clutch law, Dara said finally. It supersedes the sanctuary placement. I cannot remove her from a completed bond. She paused. The law does not anticipate bonds formed outside the species, but the law does not exclude them either. So she stays, Ren said. She stays, Dara said. Soot made a sound from the flour sack. Low, quiet, shorter than a breath. Ren glanced at her. She was still pressed against the wall, but her tail had uncurled slightly. Dara looked at Ren with an expression he couldn't quite name. You have no idea, she said, not unkindly, what you have agreed to. Probably not, Ren said, but she brought me a cloth when I had a fever. I think I can manage. Dara stayed for 2 hours. She sat across the bakery counter from Ren, which was strange. Ren had never had a customer that size on the other side of it, and she explained things in the same deliberate, careful way. She spoke everything without asking if he was ready to hear it. She seemed to operate on the assumption that readiness was something you arrived at by being told. The gift bond, she explained, was not symbolic. It was not merely cultural. Among dragons, it carried the full legal and social weight of a clutch declaration. Soot had, by the old law, declared Ren her bonded guardian. This made him, in the eyes of the elder council, her family of record. That is not a simple thing, Dara said. I understand, Ren said, though he suspected he didn't entirely. She will grow, Dara said. She will not stop growing for some years. She will require food, space, and at some point registration with the colony authority, which I will assist with as the bond changes her status from unbonded to claimed. She paused. Her wing should be assessed. There is a healer in the upper district who has worked with crumpled wing hatchlings. I will send the contact. Thank you, Ren said. Dara looked at him steadily. You understand that in dragon culture, you are now considered a member of her clutch. Ren nodded. That is not a role we assign to humans, she said. It has not happened, to my knowledge, in recorded history. First time for everything, Ren said. Dara looked at him for a long moment. Her pale amber eyes were unreadable. Then she said she chose well and stood and left the bakery with the same effect as before, the street going quiet, the sound of something large and unhurried moving through the lower district, and then the regular noise of the world coming back in pieces. Ren stood at the counter. Soot climbed from the flour sack to the stool to the counter and stood beside him, looking at the door. So, he said to her. She looked up at him. Her gold eyes caught the afternoon light coming through the cracked front window. Clutch, he said. She blinked. He went to the back room. He stood in the doorway and looked at the shelf where Ren's photo had been for the past 4 years, a small frame, the glass a little dusty, Ren laughing at something out of frame, her hair half in her face, the way it always was when she forgot to tie it back. He looked at the dish on the counter where the pebble and the button in the dried flour sat. He brought the dish to the shelf. He set it beside the photo, not in front of it. Beside it, so both were visible, the photo and the 3 small objects sitting next to each other in the afternoon light. He stood there for a moment. Then he went back to the bakery. Nilo came in at his usual noontime 3 days later and stopped in the door. With his mouth open, the bakery looked different. Ren had moved the flour sacks to the far wall and arranged them into a kind of low platform which he had padded with an old blanket. Soot was on. It sprawled in the sun from the window, taking up considerably more space than she had taken up on the old single sack. She was still small, still hatchling sized, but she was visibly, undeniably larger than the week before. She grew, Nilo said. She's growing, Ren corrected. Nilo looked at the platform. He looked at the new water bowl, which was twice the size of the old one. He looked at the dish on the shelf in the back room doorway, which he could see from where he stood. Dara came, Nilo said. It wasn't a question. News still moved fast in the lower district. She came, Ren said. Soot stays. Nilo was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled wide and genuine, the kind of smile young people have when something has happened the way it should have, even though it wasn't certain. Good, he said. He bought his roll and left. The next week, Berta from the laundry came in and left a folded piece of waterproof canvas she said she had no use for, which was almost certainly not true. 2 of his regulars started buying larger orders, which Ren suspected was not coincidence. The district official Atlas sent a form letter stating that the cohabitation complaint had been withdrawn, citing updated documentation from the Elder Council. Ren read it. folded it, and used it as a bookmark. The healer Dara had mentioned sent. Message: the appointment for Soot's wing was set for the following month. Ren reorganized the bakery shelves too. Make room for a larger food store. He fixed the cracked corner of the front window. He moved the stool behind the counter to give Soot somewhere to sit. That was closer to where he worked, because she had started following him from one side of the counter to the other when he moved, which was sweet and also a tripping hazard. She knocked over a bread basket with her tail on a Thursday, turning around too fast. Loaves went everywhere. She froze, looked at the bread on the floor, then looked at Ren. He picked up the bread. Watch the tail, he said. She made the quiet sound, the one that wasn't a hiss. He put the bread back in the basket and went back to work. Life was louder than it used to be. He didn't mind.